feel so exposed and so naked. And you know what I mean, which is why I'm standing behind here and they say random things like, just imagine your audience is naked, but now I've got this visual that I'm naked, you're all naked, and this isn't some sort of photography like expo or something that we should report to HR. So it all just gets it's a bit much. So you have to excuse me. And the person who sits in the back room telling talent what to say and how to say it and coaching them. That's my thing. So I absolutely hate bright lights and speaking in front of people. So bear with me, but I can talk underwater about what I do because I absolutely love what I do. I just sort of fell into it really. A bit about me that you might not know, I'm actually fourth generation Gold Coast. Both of my parents grew up on Fernie Avenue, Surfers Paradise, and so I know from my family how important business is in building community on the Gold Coast, and that's why I was so appreciative, Campbell, to be included in this group of small business people. I've sort of got a bit of a funny old story through my life. I don't take myself at all seriously. I think people get a bit surprised about that. But I do take business really seriously, and I've had a lot of highs and lows, losses of loved ones, divorces, miscarriages, preemie babies. And I think what I've learnt is that no matter what, like if you dig deep, you've got inner strength that you don't know you had. And that's carried across my whole entire life. So a bit about me, I lost my mum 10 years ago, and she's my North Star. And I feel her presence every day. I think my mum probably had lifestyle cancer. She was up at 4 a.m. every morning, finished work at 10 p.m. every night. And I realised when I had babies how much life she missed out on in living and in death. And so that's really influenced how I am as a mum and a businesswoman. Family and health now are everything to me, and that's why corporate 24/7 hustle isn't for me anymore. My husband and I had a baby a bit before we got married because my divorce took a long time to wind up. And, and so Tommy came, and then we were actually discharged from hospital the morning that we got married, as you do. And then sometime later, about 10 and a half months after Tommy arrived, Evie arrived. She was very keen to grace us with her presence. So I actually have Irish twins. So that's when you have two babies born in less than a year. So it's pretty chaotic, but it's a lot of fun. And we moved to Australia peak COVID. So I was on maternity leave. Evie was incredibly colicky baby. Tommy, delight, as they are. And sitting there watching COVID unfold, and the government said, oh, come home now if you're Australian, otherwise we don't know what will happen. And this is one Saturday I went out to buy food for the babies, and I went to about 8 different grocery shops, and I just couldn't find anything. I'm like, shit, babe, what are we going to do? So in less than a week, we packed up everything and moved over to Australia. We got the last international shipping out. We got the third last flight from London out. We didn't even know that the flight was going ahead, but packed up the house. And they actually shouldn't have flown us home. They had half the crew, and we didn't know that until we got to Darwin, it turned out. We hit Sydney, and then a couple of hours later they announced that everybody's supposed to go into quarantine for 2 weeks, and I had a 7-month-old and a 17-month-old baby, and I was like, thank God we got to Brisbane just before 2-week hotel quarantine, because I don't think anybody's marriage could survive that. So anyway, this is our first day out of 2 weeks at my dad's house. So we've grown a lot in that time, but certainly we've had a bit of a culture shock, obviously, as well. So, but things are going really well, and we've come a long way. And nowadays, I run most days with my babies, or not anymore, because they actually broke my running buggy. They're too big. So I dump them at kindy and go for a quick run. So that's me in a nutshell. Lots of highs, a few lows, but basically I've learnt a lot, and I feel really appreciative every day. And I just always feel that no matter what, you're supposed to be where you are at any one moment in time, and everything that gets you to this point is part of what's preparing you for the next chapter. So when I talk about my experience, people's eyes cross because I don't have a cookie cutter CV. I didn't have a career plan. I just lucked into some really awesome opportunities. Right person, right place, right situation. And I think when you don't have an ego or an agenda, you just sort of sit back and listen. And I don't know if you know this about me, some of you will. I love to get you guys talking about what you do, and I learn so much. And as an outsider looking in, just the little cogs go around and it's like, wow, that's amazing. What about this? What about that? And I feel like I interview you. I don't know, you guys might have experienced one of my coffee interviews. I'm like, tell me everything, tell me more. And it's because I'm actually incredibly fascinated about like the world of business. And so I've worked across pretty much every sector in 20 years. But before I was in comms, I was a high school teacher, and I learned a lot about behavioural psychology and how to communicate so people can know and want to learn to do something differently. And that was kind of something that I didn't expect would translate through everything that I do in communications every day, that formative understanding around psychology and learning. And part of that story is the University of Queensland. I did my master's in PR then, communications, and because they didn't have any lecturers who had a teaching background or any actual PR experience, they invited me to be a lecturer. So I've used my teaching credentials throughout my career at UQ and the University of Westminster in London as well. And also formative experience is Queensland Health. I worked through the department from the very junior person up to quite senior, you know, responsible for things like the annual report. We're building hospitals, so Sunshine Coast University Hospital, Cairns-based redevelopment, Mackay-based redevelopment. You're a generalist, and that's also been really important in my career. I don't just do sausage factory press releases, or I don't do churn, because despite the headlines of we want real doctors, not spin doctors, I'm sure you see them every year. The Courier Mail always has a headline like that. It's a really lean department, and you have to learn absolutely everything. So which is why I do pretty much everything when it comes to integrated communications. And I think, really it. Integrated communications is my sweet spot, because behind every business strategy is a communications need. And it might be influencing policy decision makers. It might be trying to drive a market awareness before you launch a new product. Every business has a different need, and once you understand what their business strategy is, and you look at the insights around who those audiences are, then there's a bespoke strategy to be created. And then once that strategy is in place, it's how to bring it across to life across the footprint, external, internal footprint. I feel like I've just rambled so much, but it's not a narrow one and done view of the world. It's an ongoing conversation with your audiences, with your influencers, to build relationships and build reputation. And the thing about reputation is it's built on stories. And so unearthing those unique stories that are what makes your business have a heartbeat that reverberates across, you know, your entire organisation and being, and ecosystem, it's outside of your organisation as well, is where the stories are. And piecing those together that ladders back up to your corporate strategy is what I absolutely love doing. So I work with videographers, I work with social media people. I'm building a network of people so that it's not a siloed approach to business and your external and internal footprint. It really needs to be cohesive. And opportunities I lead with editorial, I should say, because trust in business is down, trust in media is down, but it is still has the most authority. And if you can get a great story across media, and then you slice and dice it across your footprint, you've got this content that's keeping on going and it's working hard for your business, but it's also reaching your audience. Your audience needs to hear your message at least 7 times before it starts to sink in. So anyway, yada, yada, yada. I spoke to Ross today. I don't practice what I preach. I need to get my footprint organised, but I'm actually quite busy doing work for other people, which is fun. But my new year, new strategy mantra is like, I'm just going to make that shit happen. And if you'd like some help, talk about what your opportunities and your challenges are, please let me know. I think it's really time to think about what you want to do, where you want to take your business, and the opportunities and challenges with a fresh perspective. And I'd love to be part of the journey. So thanks so much for inviting me and including me. Do you want my quote now? I'll do my quote.
I'll do your quote now.
It's the next one.
Oh,
Of course, it's all about buzz. So there's only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. So I'd love to help you tell the right stories. Thank you.
Fantastic.